A single black mother and her son were beaten and kicked out by her in-laws, until a millionaire saw them and changed their lives forever. Pause. Can you imagine losing everything in a heartbeat, left to die under a scorching desert sun? This is Amara and Nathan's story, and it's one you won't forget. Blood streamed down Amara Janine's face as she crawled across the scorching asphalt, pulling her 7-year-old son by his arm. Little Nathan could barely walk, his face swollen from crying, a deep cut on his forehead still bleeding. Under the merciless 104-degree Fahrenheit sun of the Arizona desert, they staggered down the deserted road without water, without a phone, without hope. "Please, someone help," Amara whispered, her voice breaking as tears mixed with blood. Pause. What would you do if you were abandoned by those who swore to protect you? Stay with Black Voices to find out how this story unfolds. 20 minutes earlier, she had been at the Patterson mansion, where she had lived since her husband David died in a car accident 6 months ago. Now, her few possessions were scattered across the road, thrown out of the car that had brought her there, and abandoned without remorse. "You were never good enough for our son," were Eleanor Patterson's last words before her driver sped away, leaving red dust in the air, suffocating mother and child. Amara Jenkins, 32, a respected teacher with a master's degree in literature, never imagined her life would end like this, beaten and abandoned in the middle of nowhere by the in-laws who once promised to protect her after David's death. What she didn't know was that they never truly accepted her. A black daughter-in-law had never been part of the traditional white Patterson family plan. "Mommy, I'm thirsty," Nathan whispered, his lips cracked and parched from the merciless heat. Amara held her son close, knowing that without help, their chances of survival were slim. The road had been deserted for hours. In the distance, the heat formed mirages on the asphalt, creating the cruel illusion of water where there was only more suffering. "Everything will be all right, my love," she lied, knowing the dehydration was already beginning to affect them both. In her mind, flashes of the last few months took shape. The small changes in her in-laws' behavior after reading the will, the keys changed without warning, the documents that needed to be signed urgently, the growing determination to get custody of Nathan, the argument that morning when Amara discovered they were planning to send her back to where she came from while keeping her son. The sound of an engine broke the deadly silence. Amara turned with difficulty, raising her hand to shield her eyes from the sun. A black Range Rover approached, slowing down. She hesitated, asking strangers for help could be just as dangerous, but Nathan's condition left her no choice. The vehicle stopped a few yards away. A tall man with dark skin and graying hair at the temples got out. He was dressed simply, jeans and a button-down shirt, despite the luxury car. His dark eyes scanned the scene with an unreadable expression. "You need help," he said. It wasn't a question. Amara nodded, pressing Nathan protectively against her. "My name is Marcus Reynolds. I have water and a first aid kit in my car. I can take you to the hospital." Amara studied his face, looking for signs of danger. In the 15 years she had lived in Arizona, she had learned that not everyone viewed a black woman with sympathy, especially one in a vulnerable situation. "Please," she finally said, "my son needs help." Marcus approached slowly, as one might approach a wounded animal, and offered a bottle of water. "I won't touch you without permission, but that cut on the boy's head needs stitches, and you both have advanced heat exhaustion." When Amara accepted the water with trembling hands, she noticed something in Marcus' gaze, not pity, not judgment, but a silent acknowledgement, as if he too knew what it was like to be alone in the most desperate moment. On the horizon, the Patterson mansion was still a distant silhouette against the orange sky. From one of the windows, Eleanor Patterson watched through binoculars, her face a mask of calculated coldness. "They must be dead by now," said Richard Patterson, her husband, pouring himself a whiskey. "No one has been on that road for weeks." What neither of them realized was that this encounter on the side of the road wasn't the end of Amara and Nathan's story. It was only the beginning. And when the dust finally settled, nothing in the Pattersons' lives would remain intact. If this story of suffering, prejudice, and the hope for justice has touched your heart, subscribe to Black Voices to find out how a woman who lost everything found, on the side of a deserted road, not only salvation but also the strength to face those who tried to destroy her. At Phoenix Memorial Hospital, Amara watched Nathan sleep, his small forehead wrapped in bandages. Her own injuries seemed insignificant compared to the relief of seeing her son breathing peacefully. Mrs. Jenkins, Dr. Prickummer entered quietly. Nathan's tests are good. The concussion isn't as serious as we feared. A man in an impeccable suit burst into the room, followed by 2 police officers. Theodore Fletcher, attorney for the Patterson family. I'm here to discuss the situation of the minor, Nathan Patterson. Jenkins, Amara corrected him. My son's last name is Jenkins. Actually, I have a preliminary petition for custody. The Pattersons allege gross negligence. According to them, you fled the residence after an argument over the inheritance, putting Nathan in danger. Gentlemen, Marcus Reynolds' voice cut through the tension. This woman and her son are under medical care. Any legal matters can wait 48 hours, as stipulated by Arizona law. When everyone left, Amara stared at Marcus. Why are you helping me? You don't even know me. 20 years ago, no one stopped to help my sister. She and my nephew died on a road similar to this one. He paused. As for the Pattersons, Richard tried to take me out of business when I refused to sell my sunscreen patent. 3 days later, in the modern office of Zoe Washington, the lawyer Marcus had hired, Amara listened in disbelief to the Pattersons' accusations. They claim emotional instability and that you tried to extort money from the family. Zoe, a 40-year-old black woman with elegant braids, spoke bluntly. They also say you stole jewelry and fabricated a narrative of victimization. How can they twist it around like that? Because they have money and influence. Eleanor Patterson comes from a powerful family. The question is, what do you have against them? Amara opened her purse and took out a USB drive. I've noticed strange things over the last few weeks, documents about Nathan's custody appearing for urgent signature, my bank accounts being closed. She hesitated. I started recording our interactions after the housekeeper warned me about their plans. Zoe plugged in the drive, and Eleanor Patterson's cold voice filled the room. David should never have married her, a black teacher with no social standing. But now we're going to fix that mistake. That boy has Patterson blood, and he won't grow up with her. Zoe's eyes widened as she listened to explicit conversations about getting rid of Amara, falsifying psychological evaluations, and Richard instructing his driver to drop them off where no one will easily find them. This changes everything, Zoe said. But we need more. They'll claim illegal manipulation. And it was illegal, Amara admitted. Recording without consent in Arizona is prohibited. I looked it up. Zoe looked at her with new respect. A literature professor who knows surveillance laws. I worked at a women's shelter on weekends. In the safe apartment provided by Marcus, Amara spent her nights meticulously compiling documents and messages. Carmen Diaz, the Pattersons' former housekeeper who had quit after witnessing the assault, helped by looking after Nathan while Amara built her case. They think I'm defeated, Amara said one night. They believe I'm just a woman without resources, that I'll collapse when they offer me money to give up my son. Marcus noticed the gradual transformation in Amara. The fragile woman he had rescued was giving way to a calculated strength. What are you planning? He asked, watching her organize documents. Amara looked up, her gaze now steady. Eleanor always said I wasn't sophisticated enough to be a Patterson. Well, I'll show them exactly what a low-class literature professor can do. At the Patterson mansion, Eleanor was serving drinks to Phoenix's social elite. That woman is clearly mentally ill. Nathan will be where he belongs in a matter of weeks. Richard proudly displayed a photo of Nathan, an image used to create the illusion of a loving family concerned about their grandson. What they didn't realize was that, at that very moment, Amara was contacting dozens of people who had been wronged by the Pattersons over the years, silenced former employees, betrayed business partners, mistreated workers, people whose stories, combined with Amara's evidence, would form a perfect storm. Because sometimes, the most powerful weapon against arrogance isn't money or power, but the quiet patience of someone who has survived by watching closely. And while the Pattersons celebrated their impending victory, their every move was being documented by a growing network of allies united for justice. Imagine their surprise, Amara whispered to the sleeping Nathan, when they discovered that the same woman they left to die in the desert not only survived but learned to thrive in the harshest of conditions, just like the desert plants that appear fragile but hold unimaginable strength beneath the surface. The day of the preliminary hearing arrived like storm clouds gathering at the Maricopa County Courthouse. The main hall was filled with curious faces, local reporters, idle lawyers, and citizens drawn by rumors that the powerful Pattersons would face an unexpected challenge. Eleanor and Richard Patterson entered with the confidence of people who had never lost a battle. Eleanor, impeccable in her pearl gray suit, discreetly greeted Judge Lawrence Griffin, an old friend of her family for 3 generations. Richard smiled when he spotted 2 members of the school board among those present, people who depended on his annual donations. When Amara entered, accompanied by Zoe and Marcus, Eleanor leaned toward Theodore Fletcher with a scornful smile. "Look at her. She's still trying to look respectable." Judge Griffin banged his gavel. "We are here to consider the petition for temporary custody of Nathan Jenkins, filed by Mr. and Mrs. Patterson." Theodore Fletcher rose, flashing a rehearsed smile. "Your Honor, my clients are upstanding citizens concerned for the welfare of their grandson. Ms. Jenkins has demonstrated emotional instability and an inability to provide a safe environment for the child." Zoe Washington remained seated, calmly leafing through her documents. Her apparent nonchalance made Eleanor frown. "My clients request immediate temporary custody while psychological evaluations are conducted," Fletcher concluded, handing documents to the judge. "Attorney Washington," the judge called. "Do you wish to respond?" Zoe rose slowly. "Actually, Your Honor, I will not respond today. Instead, I would like to offer a proposal." A murmur rippled through the room. Eleanor leaned toward her husband, confused. "My client is willing to consent to supervised visits with Nathan by the Pattersons," Zoe continued, "provided that, before that, we watch a short video together." Theodore Fletcher stood up indignantly. "Your Honor, that's irregular. We're here to discuss custody, not movie screenings." Judge Griffin hesitated, but his curiosity prevailed. "What video would that be, counsel?" "A brief documentary about the events leading up to the current situation," Zoe replied calmly. "I believe it will clarify many disputed facts." Reluctantly, the judge granted permission. The lights dimmed, and a screen descended from the sidewall of the courtroom. The first image froze Eleanor Patterson in place. It was security camera footage from the Patterson mansion itself, showing Amara being pushed down the stairs by Richard, while Eleanor screamed, "Take this woman and her bastard where no one can find them." The video continued relentlessly recorded conversations about plans to eliminate the problem, emails exchanged with Attorney Fletcher discussing falsification of psychological evaluations, documents showing how they tried to alter David's will after his death. The final piece of the video was devastating. Nathan, recovered from his injuries, calmly recounting what he had witnessed. "Grandma Eleanor said, Mom didn't deserve to live. Grandpa Richard hit Mom when she tried to protect me." The lights came up. Eleanor was pale as a ghost. Richard stared at the floor. Theodore Fletcher loosened his tie, visibly shaken. "Your Honor," Zoe resumed, "we would like to file formal criminal charges against Eleanor and Richard Patterson for attempted murder, assault, falsification of documents, and obstruction of justice." Judge Griffin, now visibly shaken, adjusted his glasses. "Mr. Fletcher, do your clients have anything to say?" Fletcher was speechless. Eleanor tried to stand, but her legs gave way. Richard finally spoke. "It's all lies, digital manipulation." That's when the back door opened, and Carmen Diaz entered, followed by 3 former Patterson employees. "I witnessed everything, Your Honor," Carmen declared with dignity. "And I'm not alone." In less than an hour, Eleanor and Richard Patterson were escorted out of the courtroom in police custody. Reporters flashed cameras, capturing the fall of the untouchables of Phoenix. In the silent hallway, Amara remained seated, trembling slightly. Marcus sat down beside her, not touching her, just offering his presence. "How did we pull this off?" she asked quietly. "We didn't," Marcus replied. "You did. Your courage in recording everything, your intelligence in putting this case together. I just provided the resources. You built the strategy." In Judge Griffin's private office, an investigation was already underway into his connection to the Pattersons. At the police station, Theodore Fletcher was negotiating his own immunity in exchange for information about the Pattersons' previous crimes, including the truth about the accident that had killed David. The entire town was now talking about how a black teacher, whom everyone believed had no chance against a century-old Phoenix dynasty, had not only survived but exposed decades of corruption, prejudice, and covered-up crimes. Meanwhile, outside the courthouse, Nathan played with other children, oblivious to the storm that had just passed. His crystal-clear laughter echoed through the air, as if the shadows had finally been banished from his life. "You know what's most impressive?" Marcus commented, watching Amara. "At no point did you act out of revenge, only out of justice, out of protection." Amara looked at her son playing and then at the headlines already circulating on the cell phones around her. Patterson dynasty crumbles. Attempted murder exposed by single mother. "There are two kinds of people in this world," she replied softly. "Those who believe that power means crushing others, and those who understand that true strength is remaining whole, even when they try to destroy you." On the Phoenix skyline, the silhouettes of skyscrapers glowed against the orange sunset sky, as a new order began to take shape. The powerful and untouchable now looked around nervously, wondering who else held secrets like Amara, who else had been silenced and was about to find her voice. And at the center of this transformation was a woman who, when left for dead under the scorching desert sun, not only survived but learned to use that same sun to illuminate truths that many would rather keep in the shadows. 2 years have passed since that day in court that changed everything. The mansion that once belonged to the Pattersons now serves as a support center for women who are victims of domestic violence and racial prejudice. Amara, dressed in an elegant navy blue suit, led a group of volunteer lawyers through the hallways where she once walked in fear. "You can be sure," she explained, "that when these women come to us, they've already heard no from at least 5 different institutions. Our mission is not only to offer shelter and legal assistance but to give them back something the world has tried to steal from them, dignity." In Richard Patterson's former office, now converted into a law library, 9-year-old Nathan helped other children with their homework. His talent for math and science had blossomed in his new school environment, free from the burden of being the Patterson grandson. Now he was simply the son of Amara Jenkins, the woman who had turned personal tragedy into social revolution. Eleanor Patterson was serving her 3rd year in prison for attempted murder and conspiracy. The walls of her 3-square-meter cell were decorated only with newspaper clippings about the case that had landed her there, an unhealthy obsession that her psychiatrists classified as a pathological inability to accept her own guilt. Richard, sentenced to 5 years, had aged decades in a few months, as his health deteriorated without the privileges he was accustomed to. In the main conference room, Marcus Reynolds signed documents alongside Zoe Washington. The Jenkins Reynolds Foundation had just acquired its 10th property, another one that would be converted into a legal aid center for marginalized communities. "I believe we're ready to expand to Chicago next month," Marcus said, his face more relaxed than anyone had ever seen it before he met Amara. Carmen Diaz, now the foundation's chief operating officer, walked in smiling. "CNN just confirmed they'll be here on Thursday for their special series, Transformative Justice. They want to interview you, Amara." Amara's transformation wasn't limited to her work. The woman who once walked with her head down was now invited to speak at law schools across the country. Her story inspired legislation on domestic violence and racial discrimination in 4 different states. "You know what impresses me the most?" Zoe remarked one afternoon, as they watched Nathan playing in the yard with other children from the center. "It's not just what you've achieved, but how you've done it without losing your humanity." Amara smiled, watching her son. "I've learned that justice isn't about destroying your enemies but about rebuilding what they tried to tear down, even stronger." Across town, Theodore Fletcher, the Pattersons' former lawyer, now taught legal ethics at the University of Arizona, part of his alternative sentence after cooperating with the investigation. His lectures always began with the same sentence: "I learned the hard way that the line between representing a client and becoming an accomplice is thinner than we think." On a warm spring afternoon, Marcus and Amara walked through the gardens of the center, discussing plans for expansion. Their relationship had developed organically, first as allies, then friends, and finally as partners in every sense of the word. "You turned tragedy into purpose," Marcus observed. "Do you know how many lives have been changed because you decided to fight instead of accepting what they did to you?" Amara paused, reflecting. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if you hadn't stopped on that road. You would have found another way, Marcus replied with conviction. People like you always do. That evening, a letter arrived at the center. The postmark indicated the Arizona State Penitentiary. It was from Eleanor Patterson. I hoped she would beg for forgiveness, Amara said after reading the letter filled with bitter accusations. But some people would rather drown in hatred than admit their mistakes. And what are you going to do about it? Marcus asked. Amara folded the letter and placed it in a folder. Use it in my psychology classes to demonstrate how privilege distorts one's perception of reality. She still thinks I set her up, that I manipulated the system, unable to accept that the system that always favored her finally worked as it should. From the window, they could see Nathan teaching a new girl how to play chess, his patience and kindness clear reflections of the values Amara had preserved, even in the darkest moments. You know what the real victory is? Amara smiled, watching her son. It's not seeing the Pattersons pay for their crimes. It's knowing that Nathan will grow up without carrying the weight of the hatred they tried to plant in him. On the walls of the center, photos of dozens of families who had passed through there told silent stories of transformation. In each one, you could see the same look Amara now wore, not of someone who had simply survived but of someone who had found purpose in their pain. They say the best revenge is to live well, Amara concluded, accompanying Marcus to the garden. But I've discovered something even better, using your experience to ensure that others don't go through the same suffering. That's not just living well, it's creating meaning. And as the sun set over the building that had once symbolized oppression and prejudice, now transformed into a beacon of hope, one thing was certain: sometimes, our greatest strength lies not in what we achieve but in what we choose to build from the ruins they tried to leave us. If this story touched your heart and you believe that justice is not just about punishing the guilty but about transforming scars into strength to help others, subscribe to Black Voices, because the most powerful stories are not those where the villains are defeated but where the victims discover that they have always been the true heroes, waiting for the right moment to awaken.